Wait, hang on. Vice is headed for bankruptcy. Late night talk shows are on hiatus at the moment because the writers are on strike. Big news networks are laying off their stars. What the heck is going on in mainstream media? Hey, we're Vice. We're not mainstream media. Hey, you didn't used to be, but you are now.
Back in that bag again. Whoa, yeah. Hey.
Do you remember Vice back in like 2013? They were interviewing Russian billionaires and it was a day in the life with him, and you went in there and he had a polar bear and it was laying on his head in his underwear. It was a very strange, very confronting, very interesting documentary, and you couldn't help but keep watching despite the fact you were scared, intimidated, emotionally unstable. I mean, they had a certain way with their documentaries back in the early days. They were renowned for being in your face, brash and dangerous. And then over the years, things somehow started to change. And then recently, the New York Times have posted an article which says they're headed for bankruptcy. Vice, the brash digital media disruptor that charmed giants like Disney and Fox into investing before a stunning crash landing, is preparing to file for bankruptcy, according to two people with knowledge of its operations. Vice began as a punk magazine in Montreal more than 2 decades ago. Over the years, it blossomed into a global media company with a movie studio, an ad agency, a glossy show on HBO, and bureaus in far-flung world capitals. Disney, after investing hundreds of millions in Vice, explored buying the company in 2015 for more than $3 billion, according to two people familiar with the conversations. Who are these two people? And how did they get so much information about the operations of Vice? Why didn't they just write the article if they know so bloody much? Just get them out here for an interview. It'd be far more helpful than your vague references to these two strangers who we're pretty sure work for Vice and are just trying to get a job in some other media landscape when things do finally come to a close. But what is going on in Vice? Why have the New York Times just written an article to say that this media giant is looking like it's going to file for bankruptcy? Let's not forget, in 2017, at the peak of its powers, Vice was valued at $5.7 billion. $5.7 billion. So something's changed radically in the last 6 years, which has left it in pretty unstable ground, to say the very least. You could see the slow trajectory of things changing when you watch Vice documentaries. I was a big early fan. I remember when they came out with some of their crazy documentaries, like that Russian billionaire. They had an interesting one about underground knuckle fighting and also fentanyl use. There was never a shortage of really captivating articles. They were brash. They were dangerous. Did you ever see the one where that bloke was going along with the Taliban? You're like, hey, hang on a second, this is a bit brash, this is a bit dangerous, this is very, very unintelligent, this is a bad move. And then as a result, you couldn't help but watch. Eyes were glued and the numbers spoke stories. I mean, you looked at the views that the Vice documentaries had on YouTube and they absolutely screamed power. There are a lot of people watching. They started to throw shots. The head of Vice was talking smack to the New York Times, saying we're more dangerous, we're the new way, we've got people in places all over the world. And the New York Times goes, hang on a second, dickhead, we've got that too. He's like, nah, but we're new and brash and dangerous and we're only on YouTube. And then, as a result, he seemed to have a point. All of a sudden, heads were turning and questions were being asked. Hey, is this really the new way for media to operate? You would think, based on the fact they were opening ad agencies and bureaus and they had a shiny, glossy special on HBO, that he might have known what he was talking about. But it's also very, very true, as the old saying goes, that pride comes just before the fall. So what caused the pride and what caused the fall? That's what we want to look at today. I think when we look at the media landscape, we have to understand that things are very complex, and the Vice swagger happened with reason as they were building and growing and looked unstoppable, because like always in the world of media, ad revenue is a major source of income. And when you're a major media network, which Vice turned out to be, $5.7 billion, a lot of traction in the world of mainstream media, advertisers want to come to your company because obviously, let's not forget that whether you're a magazine, a podcast, a TV show, or a brash, dangerous news outlet like Vice became, and people start watching, advertisers want to come to you. The reason they're paying you is because they want their product seen. And if you can show them numbers and you can show them growth and you can say, hey, at this time on this video, people are going to be watching in around about this many numbers. Advertisers can go, oh, that's interesting. Is it right for our audience? At the very least, they're going to see it. Will they buy it? And they've got to go through that discussion. But the problem is, what happens when ad revenue starts to dry up a little bit? And why does ad revenue start to dry up? Well, the truth is, regardless of which media outlet you're from, with exception of a few, advertisement has started to dry up fairly recently. What does that mean? Well, there's a few reasons for this. One of the reasons is that back in the day, remember mainstream news, mainstream media, they used to have the monopoly on our attention. There'd be a 6:30 news program every night, and advertisers knew, hey, most people's eyes are going to be on this show. Or 60 Minutes is taking place at 7:30. This is where we have a big audience. So as a result, they had limited options to put their money into because those options still brought the attention, the eyes, the ears of us, the audience. So they knew that it was a fairly good ground to potentially plug a product. But in 2023, things have changed pretty rapidly. Places like YouTube have become an option where independent media is now sharing their more authentic, in some people's opinion, view of the news without any political agendas. More than that, things like Substack allow the viewer, the reader, to actually support the people that they trust, whose writing they trust. Now, why do I mention trust here? Well, it seems as though, first of all, people are craving authenticity. We understand to some extent mainstream media is manipulated and guided by the monetary interests that fund their organization. It's part of the reason that so many of these news organizations start to feel like propaganda machines, because if the people paying the money want you to say a certain thing, you're not going to go against that, because at the end of the day, money is what puts food on the table. And if we can have a little bit more of it, maybe we get a shiny new car and a nice house. So there's a lot of pressure for news agencies to cooperate with the funders of their programs, because without that support, they can't live that fancy lifestyle that they had. So as a result, people start to think, hey, this feels a little bit like a propaganda machine. All of a sudden, news doesn't seem just to be objective journalism. It starts to have a bit more of a political sense to it. Hang on a second, why are these guys telling me that Donald Trump is the worst man of all time and that we should vote for the alternative? The reason is because there's a political agenda assigned to it. That's not news to us anymore. That's not breaking news. We know that is true. You only have to say CNN to know what it is that they believe. You only have to say Fox to know what it is that they believe. You only have to say New York Times to know what it is they believe. Why is that? Why isn't there some more independent voices coming out of this? Because under the umbrella of those mainstream media organizations, there's a certain narrative which they're being told to push. And without pushing that narrative, the money doesn't come through. But people are smarter than that. You and I, the audience, watch that and go, hang on a second, this doesn't feel like objective news. Why are they telling me what I should believe and when I should believe it? And why are they telling me what I should think about world affairs and wars and things that are going on all around the world that I don't really understand? Can I really trust these people? And then over time, you see them make mistakes and you go, hang on a second, they said that with so much confidence. How do I know what they're saying right now is true? And here is where Vice finds himself in a debacle. Not only do we question the authenticity and the trust that we get from mainstream media, we also recognize the fact that because of the world and the internet these days, there's so many more voices that we can listen to. You can jump on YouTube and listen to Breaking Point or the Rubin Report, or jump on Substack and get your journalism from someone that you trust, who doesn't have, as far as we can tell, any political agenda they want to push. More than that, we get to see what honest and clear dialogue looks like. We can watch, we can sit back and go, okay, these people seem to be having a respectful conversation. One person is talking, sure, they might disagree, but they challenge each other until they get to a point of disagreement, or a point where one person wins the other person over. As a result, we watch that and we think, this feels healthier. It doesn't feel so emotional. It doesn't feel so tense, and it doesn't feel so ideological. And we can support these organizations by giving money. Now, this is where mainstream media struggles. Their main source of revenue is the ad revenue. So they found themselves in a debacle where recently, you would have noticed, they've moved into more a membership model where you can pay for the products each and every month. So you know roughly what it is that you're going to get, and they know roughly how much they're going to make. They don't have to rely solely on advertisers putting their trust and faith in whatever it is that the platform is doing. But with the dispersion of the power of people delivering the news, it means that the ad revenue diminishes because there's so many more people to do it. People can create their Substacks, their membership models, and as a result, things like the Daily Wire starts to develop momentum, because all of a sudden the political agenda doesn't seem so strong. Sure, they might lean more to the right, but they're happy to have a conversation with people they completely disagree with. So as a result, people like Vice, who had gotten excited during the highs of their right, and they had ad agencies and people to support, have to start laying off certain agencies, have to start laying off certain programs. And then they find themselves here where more than just that, the production costs, the real estate costs, they also have to keep paying their staff. But the problem is, when the money's not coming in, they don't know how to fund it. We find themselves in a pickle, which is exactly where they are. What does this mean for the world of mainstream media? Does it suggest anything about the way that news has to be delivered from this point forward? Because people, you and I, we seem to be over the inauthentic, ideological conversations which we're exposed to each and every time we turn on these news channels, and as a result, we turn our attention away. Do mainstream media change their tactics, or do they continually and arrogantly assume that they have more of an understanding of what it is that we should believe than what we do, and they keep pushing their narrative until, if and when the time comes where they too have to shut down? It's a very interesting time in the media landscape at the moment where things are changing. The giants have been humbled. David has got his stone into the head of Goliath, the media agency, and said, hey, listen here, bitch, you might be big, but you also have to be humbled from time to time. What are your thoughts on what is taking place here? Is this the end of mainstream media as they know it? Do they have to change? Will they change, or are they going to keep forcing their narrative down your throat and expecting you just to buy in and believe to what it is that they're telling you? Let me know in the comments below. If you like that, make sure you hit subscribe. Got new videos coming out every week. If you didn't like it, well, come hit subscribe anyway. Who knows what next week brings? Maybe next week will be a really good one. All right, much love to you and your family, and hopefully I'll see you back here next week.